Shalom Aleichem Internet. Today is December 14th, the 1st of Tevet. My name is Sandra Gajzinski, and here is this week's TorahByte. Torah portion is Parashat Miketz, and in it we continue the saga of Yosef. Yosef, as we left him in the end of last week's Torah portion, is languishing in the prison which he was thrown into due to the perceived crime he did with the wife of Potiphar. There he had met the butler and the baker. He correctly interprets the dreams. The baker is hung. The butler is freed and reinstated into his position. Yosef, knowing that this is what's going to happen, asks from the butler to do him a favor and advocate for him by the king and see if he can work on getting Yosef freed from prison. The butler, as the parsha ends off, forgets about Yosef. Yosef spends another 2 years in this prison, at which point Paro has his famous two dreams. In it, the first dream, the fat cows get swallowed up by the skinny cows, and the skinny cows don't change at all. Then we have the fat stalks of grain getting swallowed up by the thin stalks of grain, and again, the thin stalks don't show that at all. This scares Paro. He's not sure what to make of the dream. It disturbs him to the point where he's seeking anybody who can interpret it properly. The butler remembers the interpreter of dreams that was in the prison and tells the king about Yosef. Yosef is brought to the king. He correctly interprets the dream, telling them that God is sending him a message that there will be 7 years of plenty, and then there will be 7 years of terrible hunger in which all the bounty of the years of plenty will be forgotten and as if they never were. And he suggests and advises Paro to set aside food in the years of plenty so as to be able to survive the years of hunger. Paro loves this idea, thinks Yosef is an absolute genius, and immediately instates him as the viceroy, the second in command over the entire Egyptian kingdom. From there we go into the story of the brothers of Yosef coming down from Israel to find food during the famine years, and the only place that has it is Egypt, because that's the only place that was able to predict or knew that there would be 7 years of hunger following the 7 years of plenty. And they eventually meet Yosef without recognizing who he is. They bow to Yosef as the viceroy of Egypt, thereby fulfilling the dreams that Yosef had of his brothers bowing to him, etc. And Yosef begins a process of revealing himself to the brothers through a whole back and forth of accusing them that they're spies, asking them to bring down Binyamin, the final brother, to affirm their story, accuses Binyamin of stealing, and then sets up the eventual showdown that will lead to Yosef revealing himself to his brothers in the coming parsha. So this is, in a certain sense, the parsha that really focuses on Yosef's rise to power in the land of Egypt. And for this reason, we give Yosef a certain name, a certain title. We call Yosef HaTzadik. This is a title we do not bestow upon a single other sage, scholar, or figure within the Torah. We don't say Avraham HaTzadik. We don't say Yitzchak HaTzadik. We don't even say Moshe or Aaron HaTzadik. We only refer to Yosef as Yosef HaTzadik, Yosef the righteous one. Does that mean that Abraham, Yitzchak, Moshe, Aaron were not righteous? How is it that only Yosef seems to get this coveted title of Yosef HaTzadik? And the answer lies in the context in which Yosef lived his very righteous life. You see, the fact that Abraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Moshe, and Aaron, in a certain sense, were big tzaddikim, were righteous people, is not such a statement of greatness. They were special people, absolutely, very holy and very righteous. Nobody will take that away from them. but the conditions in which they lived were conducive for their righteousness. Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, in a certain sense, remained separate from the world, did not become fully engaged and involved. At the same time that we even mentioned that Yaakov did engage with Lavan in a business sense, and he worked in Lavan's household. He still managed to stay separate. Most of his days he was a shepherd up in the hills, staying focused only on the sheep that he was dealing with, and in a corrupt atmosphere, in a corrupt environment, but managed to maintain his bubble of sanctity and holiness and righteousness. And that holds true in a sense with all the great figures that the Torah talks about, except one. One individual was not only involved in a sense, the political and economical and financial and commercial elements of this world, but he was, in a sense, the central figure of it. He was the manager in chief of the greatest economy that world had ever known. And trust me, his days were busy with every mundane, materialistic, physical pursuit. In the country that as was not only the giant of the financial sector per se, but was also stood out as the most corrupt, decadent, and pagan society of its era. And that is the Egyptian empire, the Egyptian kingdom, with Yosef at its helm. And through it all, Yosef managed to stay a tzaddik, to stay righteous. And this is a tremendous credit to Yosef, and is why we bestow upon him this accolade and say, Yosef, despite his being involved, necessarily so, in every last element of a material life, and had every excuse to, in a certain sense, put his righteousness and his spirituality on hold, because he was a master of industry in a way that few others ever will be. He still stayed Yosef HaTzadik. And looking at this and understanding the Torah is going into great detail as to Yosef's involvement in the material world is a lesson and a message to each one of us. We often tell ourselves that we would love to be more spiritual, we'd love to be more righteous, we'd love to be more involved with our soul matters, but we are too busy caught up in making a living, in managing our financial assets, etc., etc. It doesn't allow us the time to be as righteous as we would like. Nobody had this excuse better than Yosef, and he managed to stay Yosef HaTzadik. Let's take that in mind. Let's use him as a role model and see if, in fact, we can set aside a little bit more time to be our righteous selves as we also manage and take care of our material livelihood. Wishing everybody a wonderful Shabbos and a successful, both materially and spiritually, a successful week. And see you next week for the next installment of TorahByte.